Great.
Hi, everybody. So this morning is a kind of an unusual conversation that we have here. It's in English. We do it often. This time we will see our candidate. We see a candidate to show you. I want to show you the political spectrum, political scope of different people who run for mayor. And today this morning we have with us Jim Walden, a New Yorker, originally Pennsylvanian. And this man definitely has what everybody calls an arc in Hollywood. His life is kind of has a certain logic to it, and he stands before us, a man from what I understand is, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but that's humble beginnings, what they call, right, in literature, right, in bios, but you overcame a lot of difficulties to get where you are right now, and please tell us about yourself, and so we will know more about it and proceed with other questions.
So, Dobre utro. Spasibo za приглашение. How did I do on that?
You did fine. I'm just like standing on an aircraft carrier. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, so my name is Jim Walden, and I came to New York in 1993 after growing up in a very broken steel town, very segregated town, economically challenged. I stood in benefit lines with my dad, and from that, I developed this desire to improve my life and work hard to make my mark on the world and help people that were in similar circumstances to me when I was growing up. So I started as a federal prosecutor. I wanted to take on the most difficult challenge, and so I fought the mob for about 9 years. Worked with the FBI, the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration, the NYPD. Created a great kind of informal task force. Went after organized crime groups all over the city. Also tackled some human trafficking rings and some heroin dealers who were the people in China that were importing it to the United States. Solved the largest heroin seizure in U.S. history at the time. So I had a really great career as a prosecutor that I was proud of. When I got married and started having kids, I went into the private sector as a lawyer, but the itch of public service I couldn't scratch. So I continued doing large cases for impacted communities. I fought for the indigent, the mentally ill, the disabled, public school kids, the residents of low-income housing communities, and then I really got sick of seeing bad leadership in City Hall. The last truly good mayor that we had, in my estimation, was Mayor Bloomberg. I certainly have my differences with him, but I thought that de Blasio was a disaster, and Adams has the city largely in free fall from a political perspective. We've become a laughing stock, and given my familiarity with politics and my deep understanding of what's wrong with the city, I decided to run for mayor.
That was a beautiful answer, and thank you for giving us a glimpse of your world and how you came to be where you are right now. And now you have your office, your firm is in downtown Manhattan, right?
Yeah, we started about 10 years ago with 6 people. We now boast, I think, lawyers and staff around 80. It's been a terrific business building exercise. Being an entrepreneur has been very exciting. Breaking through to become one of the elite firms in the city has been, a gift in my life. I've got a lot of great people here, and so I'm very proud of what we've built together.
Was it a surprise that you decided to run for people around you? Was it something that was in the air, or you had some previous attempts, or to everybody knew that you were a community-minded person? So what was the most interesting reaction when you announced that you're going to run?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would say that I've been so committed to public service and taking on really difficult challenges and fighting against, some of the biggest bullies in the city from my perspective, including Andrew Cuomo when he was governor, that I don't think anyone was shocked. Certainly there were people that were surprised by the timing because we were just coming up on our 10th year anniversary of the firm. It was a very exciting time for the firm. Stepping away from it at this particular moment was a hard decision to make because of how much work I put in. But I really felt at the end of the day, when I looked at the other candidates, that New Yorkers have a very, very critical choice in this next election. Go along with the broken, largely Democrat, but Republican systems as well, or take a break from the blood sport of the two-party system and have a highly capable, intelligent, thoughtful, innovative leader who is outside the party system that will hopefully bring people back together. So I mean to govern as mayor as a centrist, which means I'm going to ignore the fringes and really try to implement great policy that people can be proud of, not drag the city into scandal, and solve some of the intractable problems that we've been stuck in for so many years. And we have politicians talking about it, but no one actually solving the problems. And that's what I'm good at. So that's why I decided to run.
How this election is different from elections before? That's the question I wanted to ask you. So you would give us the lay of the land and tell us where we stand so we can evaluate sort of the progress once we start getting out of there, so to speak.
Sure. So in about a month, the Democratic primary will take place. There's something like 10 candidates in the race. Some of them are, extremely young and extremely inexperienced, and we have a range of Democratic candidates. And it's pretty clear that range stretches from the outer edges of the left, meaning people that want to replicate a socialist system, and then people that are more toward the center, but often bow to the left. And on the right, we just have Curtis Lewa, and Curtis Lewa is a great New Yorker. He's been a very talented and popular radio host, but in my humble view, he's not competent to run anything as complicated as City Hall. And so it's really going to be an interesting choice. Unlike the last election, when there were really just two options at the end of the day, it was Curtis Lewa and Eric Adams. New Yorkers were stuck. Everyone knew or suspected that Eric Adams was corrupt even when he was the Borough Hall president. I think people now know that that was true. And Curtis Lewa, for all of the good he's done, has a bunch of negatives as well. So people were stuck, in my view, with two suboptimal choices. This time, people have a choice in November, and that is a highly capable independent who just wants to deliver great services to New Yorkers. That is my only ambition. I'm not a career politician. I've never run for office before, although I've considered it a number of times. But in this moment, I hope to offer an alternative to people so that they have someone who is likable, who's good-hearted, but highly effective. And when it comes to delivering results, is a killer. And that's who I am. And if you look me up, I got where I got because whatever the challenge is, however large it is, however complicated it is, I have a plan to get it done, and I get it done for my clients. And right now I want the city of New York to be my only client.
You score a great point being a prosecutor, a lawyer, a trial lawyer. And we had a great lawyer, a great jurist in Rudy Giuliani, a former mayor of New York, the mayor, America's mayor, he used to be called, who dragged New York twice out of the abyss. First, the crime and unruly situation altogether. And then there was, of course, 9/11, and he was there. Did you have any experience working with him?
I haven't worked with Giuliani directly, but I certainly worked with people around him. I've got immense respect for him. And honestly, I think that you make a really important point. The truth of the matter is, Centrist Democrats control elections in New York. I mean, they've got the numbers. Now, currently, there are a lot more unaffiliated voters or independents than there ever were in the city of New York. By the last count, there was something like 1 million. So independent voters now outnumber Republican voters. But we're at a moment right now where centrist Democrats are sick and tired of the terrible quality. And as I've gone around the city, I've literally had people say, please be a mayor like Rudy Giuliani. Please be a mayor like Michael Bloomberg. And the truth of the matter is, I will be a lot like them, but there's important differences as well. I think that Michael Bloomberg, for example, too hard on labor. He really should have been a better steward of our relationships with trade and building unions and public sector unions, et cetera. Rudy Giuliani, not empathetic enough with disadvantaged communities. I truly mean to be a centrist. I get the safety issue. I get it 100%. There is no one in the race that you can trust more to understand the safety issue than a former federal prosecutor that literally took on the toughest criminals. But I also understand the critical importance of lifting up disadvantaged communities. And I think it's a false choice between the two. I'm not going to make false choices. I'm going to be the mayor that supports a range of values. Fiscal responsibility, critically important to me. Safety, critically important to me. More cops, getting mentally ill people off the street. Anti-corruption, getting bad apples out of New York City and cleaning it up once and for all. But at the same time, I've got the most innovative plan to reimagine NYCHA communities, the low-income housing communities. So I'm going to get them new buildings with a financial plan that gives at least the ones that really want to work hard and want to own, give them a path to the American dream as well. So I hope that I will inspire people on the right, people on the left, people on the center to have local politics return to delivering local results. And right now we need a mayor who's going to lead us through this downslide and into prosperity. And I'm the mayor for that.
How are we going to pay for it all? The new NYCHA buildings, this thing, because we got to save some, because New York is famous for overspending, right? And New York is famous for innovation and lots of other things. There's no such thing that New York wouldn't be famous for, to be honest with you.
So I love that question, and it's a question that all of my opponents duck. But I didn't duck it. So I knew that question was coming. So I put a funding stream in my housing plan. I wrote a 100-page housing plan that literally goes through every single tool that we have to solve the housing crisis. I'm not talking about helping to solve the housing crisis. I mean, actually solving it and paying for it. And it's really kind of summarized in two ways. Number one, we've got to cut out the waste in City Hall. We all know that over the course of the last 12 years, cronyism, nepotism, no-show jobs, they have become endemic in City Hall, and I'm going to strip it out. So that's number one. And number two, we can be more creative with the way that we architect these projects. And one of the things that we have that people don't realize is New York City has a lot of land. There's a lot of available land that we can use for development projects. And rather than trading away our future by giving huge abatements and reductions on taxes, we can give free land to developers and in exchange for that land, get things from them. And so, for example, to get to your specific question here, on the NYCHA communities, I'm going to restore those communities from these segregated, isolated, some of them are vibrant, but many of them are somewhat wastelands where the city's not investing any real money in the parks, the playgrounds, et cetera. I'm going to restore them to economically integrated communities where there are NYCHA buildings next to luxury buildings, next to middle income buildings and retail. And it is an exciting idea. I'm actually going to a NYCHA community tomorrow to talk to the residents about it, to try to earn their support for the plan even before I get elected. So the difference between me and the other candidates is I have achievable but exciting plans for New York that's really going to restore us to prosperity and bring that luster back to the Big Apple.
Yeah, it's really hard in such a city of individuals, so to speak. I mean, everybody considers himself an individual. Everybody is an individual. But in New York, it's very hard to find the kind of median line and to see that your work is approved and liked by everyone is almost impossible. So somebody will be against it, of course. Although it sounds fantastic, and of course, if it avoids the issue of eminent domain, where you just take the land and give as much as less than a person would be able to get for it, less than market price, then of course it may be a problem. But the biggest landowners in the city, as we know, is the Trinity Church and a couple of universities, like those pesky universities that's kind of nowadays draw everybody's attention, not for a good reason, I must say. I'm talking about the Columbia, famous now for the riotous behavior of their students that didn't do any good to anybody, including Hamas, by the way, on whose side they stand. What do you think about the rise of anti-Semitism? New York is the biggest. If you think about the number of Jews who live in the cities all over the world, New York is the biggest population concentration of Jews in the world. So what do you think, how people would respond to, how people respond? There's a, they are, the reality is they are a big part of the, what's called the tax base, and people are scared, and universities are a little bit scared for the alumni who don't want to give any more money, and it draws unnecessary tensions with the government, who calls back the funding and doesn't want to pay for things the university are used to being paid for, like research, like free tuition, etc., or partial free. So what do you think? How you would deal with this? So what we have now tomorrow, say you're a mayor tonight. So how would you deal with that?
Yeah, so I would deal with it bluntly and directly. So just so that your listeners understand, when I say something, that's what I mean, and I prove that by putting things in writing and putting specific policies on my website, which is jimfornyc.com, JIMFORNYC.com. And I put out a housing plan. It's in writing. People can see it. People can test my funding stream. I put out an anti-Semitism plan, even though I knew it was going to be extremely unpopular with my friends on the far left and the people that are Hamas sympathizers, because I am not one of them. Right? The Jewish population in New York City is incredibly important to me. It is the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. Jews in the city fundamentally helped make the city and helped make it great. And I am not going to tolerate hate against any group, and certainly not against Jewish groups as well. So I've really looked into this issue. I know the things that I can do on day one, and I don't care if people take me to court. I'm going to make it so that no Hamas flags fly in the city. It is a designated terrorist organization. I'm going to get at the protests wherever they are, because I'm going to actually put scrutiny around who gets permits, and I'm going to ban masks at those rallies. And I'm going to make sure that where there are circumstances where there are open areas of land, even on private property, and there is a threat to Jewish students or people, that NYPD is going to be there, and they're going to help keep the peace, and they're going to be better trained at de-escalation, because I don't want anyone hurt, protesters or bystanders. But at the same time, what was going on at some of these campuses was just shameful. Literally, they were training the protesters to surround Jewish kids, pin them against buildings, and then say to them, "We're not touching you, we're not touching you." But of course, the Jewish student was terrorized. That was actually happening on some of these college campuses, and I'm not going to stand for it. But at the same time, I'm not going to stand for anti-Semitism in our schools. And I brought a lawsuit against the Department of Education because there were administrators that were actually encouraging these protesters to go after Jewish teachers. And looking at some of the curriculum that was being taught, it was essentially propaganda for anti-Semitic propaganda. So I put all this in writing. It's on my website. It's called my anti-Semitism policy. Look at it, read it, and you'll see that I'm going to be a mayor that, again, when I say something, I do it. And when I do it forcefully. And that's what I'm going to do to answer your in answer to your question here.
Thank you very much, Jim. Let me ask you this. Where do you stand on the matter of school choice?
So I believe in choices generally, and so I think that this epic war that there's been between, on the one hand, charter schools, religious-based organization or schools, etc., and the public schools is a false choice. So I believe in more diversity because I think that level of competition is a good thing. At the same time, I'm a huge believer in public schools. Honestly, the public school in my community saved my life. And I know what's broken with New York City schools. I also know why charter schools, for example, have a bit of an unfair advantage because they can take whoever they want. So I believe in balance, right? I would like to help get both communities past this wasting money on throwing stones at each other, and instead have some of the programs that were started in other administrations to expand them so that charter schools and public schools exist on the same campus, and parents have a choice, and they have two great choices, not a choice between two systems that A, are at war with each other, and B, they each have problems that they need to solve. So hopefully that answers your question.
It's like field of education. Everybody involved is supposed to be educated, and they're fighting the common enemy, which is illiteracy and ignorance. And what are they fighting about? Maybe it's money.
Well, it is money, and it's political power, and this is the kind of thing, that I really think at this point, if we want to restore the luster to New York City, we've got to get past this kind of stuff. So in our public schools, I'll give you an example. Literacy rate and basic math skills hover around 50%. 50% of kids in New York City schools are at grade level in reading and math.
You're
That's
very
ridiculous.
charitable. I think it's much less.
Well, that's the average, I think. Yes, it's a little bit lower for reading than math in some schools and vice versa in others. But, in disadvantaged schools, the proficiency levels are below 20% in some of those schools, or at least around 20%. That's horrific. We've got more than $1 trillion of value that comes through our city. We are the greatest city in the world, and yet we can't get proficiency levels at 85% or higher to give kids a real path to a successful life and a successful career. We can do better than that.
Yeah. Our daughter went to Bard High School, early college, and we were, for the most part, quite happy. And there was the time when a lot of kids went after to the school from formerly being students of private schools, because they heard the word that they're pretty good quality. I went there. I fought for her like a like a tiger mom, because certain things that I see on the boards there in school on the walls, I don't want to go in there.
Did you just actually compare yourself to a tiger mom?
Yeah, my wife is also tiger mom.
That's funny. But to your point, who has it worst in public schools? And charter schools don't have to deal with this problem. Kids with special needs. And to your point, Jews are huge victims of this, especially those kids that get educated outside the public schools. They're not getting the money and the funding for their special needs. But it's the same is true for kids inside the public education system. We go through this whole process to evaluate kids, to put them on an IESP, and then ultimately they don't get the services that they need. So these are the kinds of things that, while we're sitting around fighting and throwing stones at each other, there are actual kids that are struggling, and that's where we should be focusing.
Yeah, and we concentrate on schools so much because this is the future, right? Because people live where they have a good school, they can live with anything. Bad neighborhood, good school, we're staying. But the thing is that the problem with bullying, say, the call, when they came to this country, when we came to this country, everybody was talking about bullying. I tried to figure out what it is. Yes, I had it my Soviet school when I was a kid too. I may have engaged in some behavior that may be considered bullish by American standards, but it was a normal conversation between friends, of course, in old Russia, old Soviet Union. But to me, how to put an end to it? This is absolutely like puzzling. It's a problem that is there. It's not there. And who do you arrest? How do you make an example of somebody? You cannot do anything. And bullying.
Well, you can do stuff, and it shouldn't. Like, I had this experience when I was in public school. I was a tiny little kid. I was being bullied by big people, and ultimately, I made the choice to fight, and I fought hard enough that my bully never touched me again. So, not every kid is going to make that choice. The school should be there. I brought a lawsuit, I think, 5 years ago. For every single parent in the entire system, because the New York City school district was not protecting kids from bullying. There's a state law that requires schools to actually investigate and take actions against persistent bullies. The New York City school district was not following it. I filed a lawsuit and I got system-wide relief for kids. So I understand this problem. There are vulnerable kids in our schools. I mean, literally, when I brought the lawsuit, it was because suicide rates were starting to go up. That was terrible. So we have to do a better job. And this is where I just take issue with my friends on the far left. There was this whole movement to for restorative justice for persistent bullies, and I completely understand the notion that a lot of times someone chooses bullying because they've been abused in their own home. I get it, but at the end of the day, the idea that our system's set up to require the bullying victims to leave the school and to ask for a safety transfer rather than taking action, whatever that action is, to try to remediate the situation with the bully is crazy to me. It's just backwards policy. So you can take those persistent bullies and make them better. So one of the things that I'm going to announce later this week is the creation of a mayor's district. And literally, there's going to be a citywide district of schools that have the most disadvantaged kids, and there's going to be a place for bullies in that system. And I am literally going to work with experts to get bullies in those schools, get them back on track, get them whatever mental health services they need, whatever supportive services they need, to try to help educate them on how toxic and how bad it is to engage in bullying behavior, and how they can rise above it. So I'm super excited about this education plan. I think it's going to be very, very different than what anyone's ever seen from a mayoral candidate before, and it's going to get at some of those problems that people think are so big and so immovable. But in point of fact, if you just apply a little bit of brain power and a little bit of innovation and a lot of hard work, we can solve these problems.
Of course, an elephant in the city, and I don't mean the grand old party, of course, in this situation, is the problem with homeless and illegal migrants. I would like to hear your assessment of how it was dealt before and how you're going to deal with that, because that's...
Yeah, of course. I mean, honestly, it's a huge issue. It's a really important issue. By the end of this year, we will have spent more than $12 billion as a city on the migrant problem. So let me talk about the migrants first, and then I'll talk about the homeless.
It's more than 10% of the budget of the GDP of New York City, by the way.
It is. I mean, and just imagine what all of that money could have gone for if this crisis was dealt with better. So I got two comments on Mayor Adams, and honestly, I have zero respect for the man as a planner or a policy person. I think he doesn't have a clue. I went to his administration when the buses started to come and laid out for him, not for him directly, but for a lawyer on his city hall staff, a litigation plan to stop the buses so that we wouldn't have had this problem to begin with. And they rejected the idea because they didn't want to appear anti-migrant at the time. And now the political winds have blown and he's going to be the one that cleans up the problem. How did they deal with the problem? So they could have avoided the problem, right? But how did they deal with the problem? Instead of doing what sophisticated countries and cities do and create mass communities to co-locate services and migrants in places where they're not in the middle of the city, where it's the most expensive, they decided to put them in hotels. That was ridiculous. There are displaced populations all around the world. And in today's day and age, there are modular units that are available, affordable, durable, they can be sanitized, and you can literally create large communities where you're trying to process people to get them out of the city and to other places, whether that's back to their home country or that's integrated in New York, or it's some other community that needs the kind of labor that they're able to do. Now, the truth of the matter is a whole bunch of those people are eventually going to go back to their home countries because they filed political asylum applications, and those applications will eventually be rejected. We know that the acceptance rate for political asylum claims, because the standards are so high, is something like 20%. So if we had placed them into an interim community where they had services, transportation, we could have also put immigration courts there. We would have needed some help from the federal government because they control the immigration system. And we could have gotten tens of thousands of these people that are not going to be welcome here permanently. We could have gotten them back to their home countries already. So with respect to migrants, I think the whole thing from soup to nuts was mishandled from a political perspective. From the Democrats and the Republicans, in my view, were equally responsible for it. The
Republicans were not in power, not in White House. Now we started handling it more or less properly. At least the illegal crossings are down.
No, well, I said responsible. And let me just make sure I explain why I say responsible, because this is important. Our legislators in Congress have been avoiding immigration reform for years. The Democrats have been terrible on the border, but there have been any number of proposals that either the Democrats shot down, the Republicans shot down, both of them shot down. We need more immigration judges to get people out of the country more quickly. We need stricter laws so that they are screened better. And we need federal legislation to permanently place better supports at the border to keep people out. We've known for 30 years that we need these things, and yet Republicans and Democrats, the two-party system, haven't delivered. So as mayor, I'm not going to be dealing with those hot button issues, those big issues, but I do believe that at this point, we need someone to clean up the mess. We need someone who's not going to be involved in the larger conversations about national policy. We need someone to figure out, now that we have this population here, how we can thoughtfully, fairly, but aggressively separate them into different communities, different groups, treat, for example, migrant families with children more leniently than we would, for example, single individual criminals. They need to go right away. But single individuals who have political asylum claims, they are most likely going to be escorted out of the country. And we need to accelerate that process so that we can reduce the amount of people that we are responsible for caring for and get our economy back on more stable footing.
To be fair, I must say that Mayor Adams' administration tried to deal with the crisis by putting the migrants into Floyd Bennett fields.
They did.
Yeah, and they will also they try to arrange let's call it camp, camps for shortness. But there was a lot of things for comfort to comfort the people there, and they failed to do it in I think on the Riverside in the Bronx. Then they wanted to do it on Randall Island. And again, there was failure after failure. And what seemed to be the most successful was Floyd Bennett Field, where people were kind of cut away from transportation. They couldn't go anywhere. They had everything mobile. They had first-class internet. They had the mobile showers, etc., etc. And it was like a very, very expensive enterprise that made people think that the illegals get more from the government than the normal citizens, regular citizens of this country, who at least pledged allegiance to this country. Because I find it ridiculous to defend people who have no obligation before our, even, you know, in our cynical world, what's this thing that you hold your hand on your heart and you pledge allegiance to the flag and being a citizen, and people get equal protection without even speaking English and knowing what Constitution is, ever seeing a Constitution, let alone reading it. And this country pays de facto, pays from the pockets of those who pledge their allegiance and they're ready to defend this country. Anytime you talk to an American, we are ready to stand up and do what's needed from us to do. And then people who have no connection except hearing that there is a good life in America, and they still vote, by the way, all over the world. They come to this country, whatever they may say in their newspapers, in our newspapers and websites, they still want to come to America. This is the highest proof of what this country is still. So to me, it's a little bit kind of self-defeating argument.
Well, listen, my perspective is a little bit different than yours, but I'm a centrist through and through, right? So listen, my family on the one side, I mean, I'm like the perfect American mutt. On the one side, my family goes back to the late 1600s in the United States. On the other side of the family, my grandfather literally rescued my grandmother from Vienna during World War II and brought her here. She came through Ellis Island. You can find her name on the registry. So we're a nation of immigrants. We're a nation of fair people, but we're also a nation of people that realizes that we've gotten immigration wrong. As mayor, I'm not going to be weighing in on the bigger issues. I'm going to be dealing with the problem. And whatever you can say, Floyd Bennett Field was a great idea that proved to be a half measure, right? What we should have done is, I mean, whatever the costs were for Floyd Bennett Field, that's not what's driving the money that we're paying. It's that these migrants are staying in hotels and we're paying anywhere between like $110 and $305 a night for their lodging in these hotels where there are no services there. So either they have to be brought to the services or the services have to be brought to them. It's spread out all over the city. And that's what's costing us $12 billion by the end of this year. So if I had been mayor at the time, first of all, I would have just stopped the buses. I would have there was a clear violation of federal law. I empathize with Texas for having the border problem, but as mayor of New York, I would have stopped that, what I think was a stunt in its tracks, and we wouldn't be in the situation we're in. So that's number one. And number two, if I was unsuccessful at stopping the buses, I would have had a more sensible, more cost-effective, a better plan for everyone. It would have been better for us, because it would have cost half the money that the city ultimately spent, and it would have been better for the migrants, and it would have been better for the nation, because I would have had a world-class, working with the federal government, I would have had a world-class immigration court on site to process those political asylum applications more quickly, so that people could be taken out of the country if they didn't qualify to stay here. And we'd be at a significantly lower population. And for the population that stayed, they'd be better off because they'd have jobs, and we would find them housing and integrate them into communities that actually need their labor. So my view is we would have been better all around if we had had a centrist who got past all the political nonsense and stopped blowing with the political winds right or left, and instead just solved the problem.
Yeah, you got to see the problem, of course, first and foremost. And the biggest political stunt maybe in the history of our country so far was inviting everybody to cross basically illegally, and opening this for every kind of crime and violation, etc.
I couldn't agree with that more.
That
really,
was
I mean,
really...
honestly, that was. It was a. whether it was a stunt or not, or it was heartfelt, I'm not taking a position on that. I really don't know, but we should have had better border control the entire time. And that was a huge mistake by the Biden administration. But honestly, I think that the Trump administration will be making a mistake now if it doesn't triple the size of immigration courts in large cities and help us and work with Congress to come up with a more accelerated process for evaluating political asylum applications, because literally a third of the people that are physically here, once their court cases are done, we can then deport them back to their home countries. If their political asylum application is approved, okay, great, then they stay. That's the law. That's federal laws. The city has no control over that. But if their political asylum application is rejected, they go back. And so literally the number of people that were here would likely be reduced to 20% of its current number if we just had cooperation between the cities and Washington to increase the immigration courts and speed the process for evaluating these applications.
But there is a thing that was put in the mix recently. It's giving a free flight to destination of choice of the illegal, and people can go home for free, and they get $1,000 once they get there and they report, and they would get $1,000. Don't you think it's kind of practical way to do it and less expensive?
I think it's been tried in other cities, and those projects don't work. And what you find, at least when the ones I've looked at, is the companies that get the contracts. Like when you really look behind them, you're not necessarily wanting those companies to be getting public dollars for a program that's not effective. So, listen, I'm a fiscal conservative, no matter what. So when I see these travel agencies, and the one that Mayor Adams, Mayor Adams announced this plan, I think it was like 3 months ago. I looked into the travel agency, and it was like a corporate travel agency. What expertise do they have getting migrants back to their home countries? So I was very suspicious of that when I saw it. But in any event, I don't think those programs work. I think that we have to focus on the problem. You said it best. The problem is that we have a whole bunch of people here, and we cannot get them out of the country. Right? We cannot do it under federal law unless federal law changes, A, or B, whether federal law changes or not, we accelerate the process for evaluating their individual circumstances. That's what due process requires. And so if we don't solve that problem, they're going to stay, and we're going to be another $12 billion in the hole 3 years from now. So let's fix the problem. Let's work together with Washington to increase and speed the immigration process. That is where everyone should be focusing. That way, migrants get their due process of law. Americans get effective leadership, where we are trying to cull this group down to the number of people that will actually stay here long term. Let's get them into communities where we need their labor, and let's stop all the fighting, and as Americans come together and fix the problem. The problem isn't giving them tons of money and just letting them stay here forever. The solution is not, the solution is not doing that. The solution is not, rounding them up and denying them due process and, undermining American values. The solution is in the center.
Listen, a lot of people feel like undermining American values is to taking money from one person and giving it to another. That's kind of also an American value, and some people value it more than the values provided to us by Constitution. That's a fact. So let me ask you this, and we have I have about two questions.
Speak to that for 1 second, Jay?
Sure.
Is it okay if I speak to that for 1 second? I hear that, and I've heard that all over the place, but everyone says that until it's someone that they care about that is the one that's rounded up. And my point is, let's stop fighting. We have American values, right? The American dream, people being able to pay their bills and have a nest egg and being able to move forward, hugely important. We have to lower the tax burden all over, not just with respect to migrants. But we are also a country of laws, and we do have due process of law, and that is just as much enshrined in American values. Let's not fight over whose values are better. Let's come up with a solution that gives everyone a piece of they're feeling like my values are the priority of my values are being seen. And time and again, I just think that we have these politicians that just play to their base, and the solution is in the center. Let's be fiscally responsible and help people move forward without a huge tax burden for migrants and other things, while at the same time we give due process of law and rise to the level of our American values on that score too. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. Absolutely. And legal and proper immigration process is the answer. And I think that politicians in Washington should roll up the sleeves and just work on it instead of, polluting the ether, I would say, with their, hearing.
We are in violent agreement.
They don't feel, yeah. So maybe last question that I have for you. For today, I have plenty of questions left, but seeing that you're busy with your campaign and your constituents, possible constituents, were already afoot and working and hauling boxes of groceries and sitting in the offices and solving world problems, etc., etc., etc. What should be a relationship between New York City and Washington, D.C., namely President Trump? Because sometimes I feel like New York has painted itself into a corner. We have a New Yorker boy in the White House, Queens boy in the White House, right? Any other situation, people would be proud of that. Today, New York is standing like this versus the White House and the whole bunch of people who are there trying to make America great again. What's the perfect picture for you, how it should be? Because New York is a Democrat city, like Walden, with the opinions, with the generational loyalty, I would say, despite of, to me, it's not a mystery. I understand it. I said that's how, cannot take a distrust for government from those who grew up in Soviet Union. But let me see if you can say a few words on this regard. How would you build your relationship? Because if you get elected, when you get elected, as they say in politics, right? When you get elected mayor, how would you deal with Washington, D.C. for the rest of your mayoral career? Because President Trump is not going anywhere, thank God, and he'll be there.
So I would deal with Washington, frankly, the same way that I deal with Albany, right? Albany for years has been a yoke on our neck as well. So it's not as though, Trump is doing something that is, he's doing something that is much more severe and much more immediate, to be sure. But it's the same kind of thing that I've seen come out of Albany. So I think it's really important for us to have an adult in the room who is going to put their own personal opinions aside of the benefit of the qualities of any leader and respect the positions and have an arm's length productive relationship. And that's what I hope to have with the Trump administration. That's what I hope to have with the Hochul administration. But where our values are under attack, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight not at the bully pulpit, not by slogans and politicking, but in courts. Right. So I am going to form a task force that is looking at some of the things that the Trump administration is imposing on our businesses and our institutions and our law firms, for example. I do think some of those actions are unconstitutional, and I want to protect New Yorkers from them. I think that some of the things that Albany has done to New Yorkers is unconstitutional, and we have an underused provision of the state court that gives more autonomy to New York City, and Albany should be staying out of our business more. And so I don't want to be pulled one way or the other by either one of those groups. I want to be able to run the city the way New Yorkers want their city run without anyone preaching to us about what we should or shouldn't be doing. So I'm going to be an adult mayor that collaborates with Albany or Washington as much as possible. We need dollars for infrastructure, resilient infrastructure, for development, for my NYCHA plan. Federal and state dollars are going to be critical to landing that plane under my housing policy. But at the same time, you go after our institutions, you start telling us how to have our police do their jobs, whatever the policies are that are coming out of either Albany or Washington, I'm going to push back as mayor in a way that people are not used to, because this is what I've done for 30 years. So I just want, and I'll go back to what I said before, I'm going to treat New York City like my client, right? I'm going to deliver great results. I'm going to protect it regardless of who is coming after us. But at the same time, I'm going to be the adult in the room that is going to say, putting aside my own personal views, I want to collaborate and cooperate in every way possible, consistent with New York values, with both Washington and Albany. And that's the kind of mayor I'm going to be.
Jim, thank you so very much. I have a feeling that we may meet again.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for the invitation.
To think so. And I think that we may have other things to discuss, and I cannot hold you any longer. You have to go back to your campaign. And I wish you luck. I wish you. I think you're a good candidate, and as any good candidate has some room to improve your kind of approach. The more you learn about New Yorkers, and this is a universe, of opinions, a universe of attitudes, for sure. That, and you got a taste of it already, I'm sure. But it's something that I enjoyed thoroughly, and I think it was an open and frank conversation. And certain things we have to decode as time goes by and you advance in your campaign, I hope with great success.
Thank you so much, and thank you again for having me. I was really grateful to be here.
Thank you very much, дорогие друзья. Я постараюсь сделать все, чтобы перевести. Мы предполагали, что у нас будет переводчик, этого не получилось. Я постараюсь сделать все, чтобы перевести этот разговор на русский язык. Он важен, будет отдельное видео. Пока вы можете воспользоваться субтитрами, которые включаются на YouTube, и они передают достаточно верно, скажем, 70% того, что было сказано сегодня по-английски. Огромное вам спасибо, Jim. Thank you. I just told people that it will be in Russian as well, and they can turn on the subtitles eventually once the video gets processed by YouTube. So, thank you, everybody. Спасибо всем.
Thanks, everyone.